are a lot of films that probably come to mind when you think about superheroes. The genre covers an insane range of movies, but a special few definitely stand out above the rest. From the Marvel and DC universes to a few outside-the-box superhero films, these are the best superhero movies you absolutely must see. The Avengers. The Marvel Cinematic Universe currently spans more than a dozen films and counting, but the pinnacle of the franchise was arguably established relatively early on with the Avengers. The studio tapped geek demigod Joss Whedon to write and direct the project, and the result was a critical and commercial hit. The Avengers remains one of the most successful films ever made. The movie pulled in more than $1.5 billion worldwide, and is still one of the highest rated films in the MCU. It's a comic book brought to life in the best possible way, thanks to Whedon's ability to blend a bevy of characters and a compelling story into one perfect package. The Dark Knight. Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy is widely considered one of the best Batman interpretations ever put to screen. It's been more than a decade since the trilogy launched, so it's easy to forget just how significant these movies were for the franchise. 8 years after Batman and Robin bombed, Nolan proved the Caped Crusader was still viable on the big screen with Batman Begins, then raised the stakes even higher with 2008's The Dark Knight, arguably the best of the bunch. The film is moody, smart, atmospheric, and boasts some of the best superhero action scenes ever put to film. Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker is a particularly fine example of the genre's dramatic potential.
Never start with the head. The victim gets all fuzzy. He can't feel the neck. See?
Captain America: Civil War. This Captain America sequel has been described as Avengers 2.5 for good reason. It featured as many heroes as your typical Avengers film and told a politically charged story that set Earth's mightiest heroes against one another in one of the most eye-popping big screen battles ever conceived. Along with giving fans high-stakes hero versus hero battles, Civil War also took a major step toward moving the MCU forward. It introduced Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther to mainstream audiences and gave us our first look at Tom Holland's newest incarnation of Spider-Man.
Well, I could have stuck the landing a little better. It's just a new suit. Wait, it's nothing. Mr. Stark, it's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't really need to start a conversation.
Okay. Captain?
The Incredibles. We're calling it right here and now. The Incredibles is one of the best superhero movies ever.
Honey!
What?
Where's my super suit?
What?
Where is my super suit?
Brad Bird's 2004 animated masterpiece was basically a spin on the classic Fantastic Four story, but with so much more. It built a fascinating world and seamlessly grappled with questions of adulthood and responsibility in ways kids and grown-ups could follow and appreciate. It's also crazy fun and laugh-out-loud hilarious. It's taken almost 15 years, but a sequel is finally in the works with a release date set for 2019. Does The Incredibles need a sequel? No, but having Brad Bird back in the saddle helps ease our fears a little. Iron Man. This movie is the granddaddy of the MCU, and it's just as good today as it was when it blew our socks off in 2008. With heavy hitters like the X-Men and Spider-Man already sold off to larger studios, Marvel had to pull heroes from the bench to launch its shared universe. Iron Man was one of the best of the rest, so they gave director Jon Favreau a lot of freedom and banked on the charisma of Robert Downey Jr. The gamble worked, and this movie managed to tell an extremely fun story while setting the tone for the dozen or so movies to follow. There's also a textbook example of how to get a superhero origin story right on film. Deadpool. It's an absolute miracle this blood-soaked, F-bomb drenched film ever made it out of development hell, but aren't we all glad it did? A Deadpool movie kicked around in script form for years, but it took the leaked concept reel to finally build enough momentum to get it made. The Merc with a Mouth now holds the record for the highest grossing X-Men film and the highest grossing R-rated film in history. Not bad for a B-list comic character with a foul mouth.
That does it! Oh! Canada!
X-Men Days of Future Past. Combining the worlds of the original X-Men trilogy with the prequel sequel X-Men First Class was a tall order, but Bryan Singer pulled it off in spades with his return to the franchise. Days of Future Past managed to deftly weave together a story spanning decades with two separate casts and still keep all those narrative threads tight enough that even casual fans could still follow along. It also stealthily retconned the disappointing X-Men The Last Stand, making all things right within the cinematic X universe. Not bad, right? Blade 2. When the first Blade film released in 1998, it turned out to be a surprise box office hit. The studio brought in Guillermo del Toro to tackle the sequel. Blade 2 was basically everything you loved about the first film, but better. Instead of just fighting bloodsuckers, Daywalker Blade is roped into a larger fight for survival against the positively terrifying Reapers. Much like X-Men, this film was an early proving ground for serious adaptations of superhero stories that predated the Avengers and their pals by several years. Logan. After the unanticipated mega success of the R-rated Deadpool, 2017's Logan finally allowed Jackman's spirit animal to spill copious amounts of blood, sever limbs, and make full use of the colourful vocabulary he's long enjoyed in the comics. Pitched as basically Little Miss Sunshine with superheroes, Logan is a movie that X-Men fans never expected to actually happen. Inspired by the classic western Shane and very loosely based on Mark Millar's Old Man Logan comics, Logan makes Wolverine interesting again as a broken man with a failing healing factor. Sir Patrick Stewart gives one of the best performances of his career, but it's Daphne Keene's performance as the merciless X-23 that elevates a would-be grim character study into a must-see neo-western murder pageant. Guardians of the Galaxy. This movie is just crazy fun. Chris Pratt's Star-Lord proves that 70s rock songs belong in outer space, and so do Marvel superheroes.